All right, good afternoon, everybody. So I'm going to be presenting the introduction for the third topic of our afternoon, which is organizational culture and inclusion. Now, every organization has its own culture that represents the organization's values, its ethics, its attitudes, and its ways of doing things. Many leaders attribute much of the success of their organizations to the culture. But culture can also have unintended consequences that limit the success of the organization and limiting the satisfaction and productivity of those who which it works. Now, oftentimes, these unintended consequences are a result of unconscious biases, either in favor of or against certain populations or certain individuals. Now, these biases can be built into what is most valued and how things get done. So, for example, in behaviors such as who gets invited to things, who's included on formal and informal conversations, and even the organizations, and who gets recognized and even listened to. And although our laws do not permit discrimination based on gender, many women find that the culture of an organization can enable the persistence of more covert forms of bias and sometimes outright discriminatory behavior that limit the opportunities of women. Women who feel excluded have been shown to leave their organizations more frequently than those who have felt included. They are less satisfied and committed when they believe they, or even other women, have been subjected to discrimination. Women at all levels of organizations can find themselves subject to these forms of blatant or even unconscious forms of discrimination, including sexual harassment, that have an impact on their job satisfaction, productivity, and advancement. Now, women who drop out of high-tech jobs report that the undermining behavior from managers was also a major factor. And low-wage workers are particularly vulnerable to harassment and other forms of discrimination because they cannot afford to risk retaliation, including loss of a paycheck, not being put on the schedule, or even having fewer hours if they file reports. Now, the full impact of gender discrimination is not only felt by women, but also by organizations that may be losing out on the skills that women bring to the workforce. And as they leave at higher rates than they would if they were discriminated and were eliminated. The insidious impact of discrimination on the overall productivity of the organization means that people throughout the organization, not just those directly affected, often suffer the consequences. So now what's our alternative? An organizational culture of inclusivity is one that welcomes the contributions and the participations of people from a wide variety of perspectives, talents, and attributes. Many leadership experts agree that a culture of inclusion is often the key to an innovative, energetic, and sustainable enterprise. The benefits of an inclusive culture can include increased respect and mutual understanding, increased creativity and problem solving through new perspectives, ideas, and strategies, increased trust, cooperation, and teamwork, greater innovation through risk-taking, greater sense of fairness, engagement, and higher morale. The organizations that are committed to rooting it out of unconscious bias need to police their own cultures to surface how it negatively impacts women and other groups that may be disadvantaged. Some common strategies to create an organizational culture of inclusion include create managerial accountability and transparency, where managers are required to justify the decisions they make and the actions that they take, especially when it comes to recruitment, selection, promotion, and efforts to develop their employees further. Training leaders to correct peers when they've made greater assumptions when women workers, or to challenge their management teams to revisit performance reviews and assessments to determine if they have rated female staff unfairly. Most importantly, refraining from talking about the female coworker's appearance is crucial. Also, conducting trainings and providing coaching for managers so they can personally reflect on how their own behaviors contributes to the culture and create a plan to lead the shift in culture. Auditing organizational communications to ensure the appropriateness of images, languages, and other messaging. And lastly, assessing how the physical environment itself can be adapted to encourage women and others to feel welcome, safe, and included. Now, changing cultures, it's not for the faint of heart. Efforts need to be sincere, and they need to be sustained over time. And if an organization is to do this, they must commit to a long-term effort that will have peaks and valleys along the way. However, the benefits of creating a culture of inclusion for women and others has been shown to be of immense value, not only for those who have suffered from discrimination, but also for those who seem to have benefited from it. And ultimately, organizations are also the beneficiaries in terms of increased loyalty, productivity, and engagement. And that is the product of a culture of inclusion.
So, we again are blessed with people from several different organizations who have some real experience in being in organizations that the culture has become more inclusive over time, and they're going to share with you some of those practices. So if the panel would please join me now. First joining us is Mayor Pro Tem Angela Lawson, representing Mayor Steve Hogan. Second is Georgiana Venitas from Essentials for Childhood. And then Tamara Mohammed from the Aurora Chamber of Commerce. And then we have, they're different here than I see them, Valencia Faye Tate. And following Valencia was Mario Harding of Denver Health. And then we have Sharon Bailey from the Denver Public Schools. And finally, we have Mayor Connie Sullivan of Lyons. So, Mayor Pro Tem Angela Lawson, we'd like to hear what you have experienced that local government can do to actually foster more inclusive workplaces.
Well, the city of Aurora has done quite a bit of things. As you know, we're one of the most diverse communities in the state. And some of the things that we have done to foster, to make it inclusive with our workplace, is that we have the International Roundtable, we have an international cabinet. So these groups particularly, what they do is they interact with our city departments, which I think is very important because it not only provides insight for those groups, but for the people that work into the organizations. As you know, we have over 130 languages spoken in the city of Aurora. One of the job opportunities that we have as a stipend for employees is that a lot of times for council meetings, a lot of times for the information that's online, we actually have to need translations. Some of the translations that we have that are spoken are Spanish, Arabic, Amharic, Korean, Vietnamese, Burmese, and Nepali. And that actually provides the employees an opportunity to actually do some growth development, but also learn about and interact with other people in our community. So that's some of the things that we've done on that level. When we're talking about being inclusive as well in the city of Aurora, some of the things that I think that they have done a really good job of is essentially providing more opportunities for people to work outside the community, to volunteer with our Global Fest. Which is significant because it's a festival that we have in August that basically celebrates our cultures in the city of Aurora. Learning what's different is really important, even when you're an employee, even when you're on the council. Just me interacting and getting out in the community is very important as well. And I think it actually plays a really important part in the city dynamics and also in the city work culture, because we have to interact with those communities and you learn a lot about yourself and you learn a lot about what's going on in the community. Some other things that I think that we should consider in the workplace policy, is looking at the multi-generational gaps that we have. Right now we have baby boomers, we have X-Geners, we have millennials. How do we as a policy team, and the city of Aurora is doing that, encompassing those dynamics and that collaboration, which I think is very important because sometimes there can be a disconnect. And I think what is important that what Aurora is doing is they're talking about those type of policies. I know some of the innovative ideas that they've done the cafe to make it more innovative and more for millennials and for people of all generations to be able to collaborate. I think as we look at things and as we look at overall, Aurora has done a really good job. There's also steps that we need to be taken to move forward. And ultimately, that's how we've done an inclusive culture. That's how we've kind of maintained the ability for our city and for our departments to interact with our communities and actually interact with themselves within the workforce.
Angela, this is given the unique situation in Aurora with so many people coming from other countries as refugees and as immigrants, have you experienced some of the cultures that are the most difficult to create the inclusion for? And if so, could you share with us?
I think some of the cultures that I have seen is there's sometimes a trust issue. And I think a lot of the communities, a couple of the communities, I know that for me, some of the Ethiopian and Somalian communities, they really have good outreach, but they do have sometimes, should we actually collaborate? Should we actually talk, or how do we interact with the city? How do we navigate the services? I mean, how do we have an input into our city government, which I think is really, really important. But how do we get, as a city, that's something that we should do more of. Embed the trust of these groups so they can become involved because they are important to our city services and to our city in general.
Thank you so much. Now we're going to hear from Mayor Sullivan. And the question for you: what does inclusion look like as you approach enrolling and engaging all the voices in your community?
All right, well, thank you for inviting me to be a participant on the panel today. We're very different from Aurora. In Lyons, we're really a small town. We're just about 2,000 people. And prior to becoming mayor, I served on the Board of Trustees, and I think many of you probably know we had a pretty significant event take place about 3 years ago in Lyons with a federal disaster with the flood that took place. And one thing that happened with the flood is it became more apparent the divisions within the community. I think prior to that, everyone was pretty cohesive, and then after that, some people were affected much more so than others. And it really raised this awareness of the differences of the people in our community who were struggling and those who were minimally impacted and able to kind of move on with their lives. So when I was elected about a year ago, one of the things that I took notice of was we have a series of boards and commissions in the community, and those boards and commissions advise the town board on how to make decisions. And one of the roles of the mayor is to appoint people to those boards and commissions. And in a small town, there's always this fear that we're not going to get a lot of people to volunteer. So that was the justification for not enforcing term limits on the boards and commissions. So I did one of the things that was probably considered to be somewhat unpopular and started enforcing those term limits, because I was convinced that if we wanted to have more diverse representation on those commissions in the community, we needed to open up the seats and allow different folks an opportunity to participate. And so we notified people who were term limited and said, thank you so much for your service, but we're going to give some other folks an opportunity to step up. And we advertised those positions, and I found that if you want to solve issues in your community that affect everyone, you need everyone at the table. Everyone needs an equal opportunity to participate. And particularly in some of the lower income neighborhoods, for women, we needed to reach out to them and say, how can we get you involved? How can you come and be part of the discussion? And we started to identify some of the barriers that exist for people to participate in our boards. First and foremost, if you work an hourly job, there's a loss of opportunity cost to volunteering your time. Your schedule may not be as flexible for participating in meetings. So we actually increased pay for elected officials and offered some volunteer services for childcare so that people wouldn't have to pay for childcare to come to a board and commission meeting. So there are some creative ways that we try to influence people to get involved. Some of the other things that we've found are that you have to appeal to the men in your community to get them to free up their wives for boards and commissions. And there's some really good messaging out there to get men more involved in childcare and to help out and allow their wives to participate. For example, there's really good evidence that fathers who are attentive to their daughters raise daughters who are less likely to be in abusive relationships later in life. So talk about those opportunities with the men in your community and say, here's a really good reason why you should be helping out a little bit more in the evening so that your wife could participate in a board and commission. So those are just a few examples of what we've tried to do.
Thank you very much, Connie. And next we're going to hear, yes, sorry. Next we're going to hear from Georgiana. Thank you. I apologize.
No, it's okay.
The question is, what are the tools that can be utilized to create inclusive work environments?
Great, thank you. Thank you for having me here today. I think I should first start out by saying part of our family-friendly efforts are surrounded around a project called Essentials for Childhood out of the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment. And Essentials for Childhood is a child maltreatment prevention project that really focuses on community and societal level strategies, so policy, organizational, systems level strategies to prevent child maltreatment or to create safe, stable, nurturing relationships and environments for families. And I think one of the statistics that kind of often comes to mind is, I think it was mentioned earlier, over the last 50 years, households in which both parents work outside the home has increased from 40 to 60%. So we know that with more parents entering the workforce, that stress comes along with that. And we know that stress is a significant risk factor for a number of health outcomes, including child abuse and neglect, along with chronic disease and a number of other health outcomes. So really, family-friendly employment strategies is a strategy towards reducing that stress and ultimately reducing negative health outcomes. So healthier families means healthier children, ultimately means a healthier workforce for our future. The Essentials for Childhood project, in collaboration with EPIC, Executives Partnering to Invest in Children, a nonprofit organization based here in Denver, have come together to create a family-friendly workplace toolkit that has a number of different strategies for a number of different types of employers, ranging from the private sector, nonprofit, government agencies. Just to give you kind of a little brief overview of what's included in this toolkit, some of the components are a culture of flexibility, core benefits, which include insurance benefits, paid leave benefits, supportive services and resources, career development opportunities, and community involvement opportunities. And it's really interesting. We've had a number of conversations here today that have really kind of made me think about what's included in this toolkit and how to improve it, how to include a broader gender equity lens and inclusivity lens. So that's really great. This has been a really great opportunity for me. In addition, some of the other strategies that we've been partnering with HealthLinks, which is an organization out of the Colorado School of Public Health that conducts a health and safety assessment for businesses in the state of Colorado. We've recently collaborated to produce a family-friendly addendum to that health and safety assessment.
Great.
And that addendum includes all the components that I identified in the toolkit as well. Finally, one of our strategies is around conducting business forums. In 2016, we hosted 2 business forums, one at the Children's Hospital of Colorado and one in Pueblo at the Sheriff's Department. And the idea behind the business forums are we invite a number of business folks to talk about what the policies look like within their organization and how they've been supportive of themselves and their families. And then the audience is in turn also business folks who are listening to these opportunities and how employers have been able to support families. So we're hoping that these business forums really encourage employers to adopt family-friendly policies and become more competitive with other businesses.
And Georgiana, could you please tell everyone how to get a hold of the toolkit?
Yes, so the toolkit is located in many places. If you Google Family Friendly Workplace Toolkit, EPIC, you can find it on EPIC's homepage. You can also find it on the Early Childhood Colorado Partnerships homepage, and you could also find it on coloradoessentialsforchildhood.org.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Sharon Bailey, we have a tough question for you, I think. What are the most important ways to dismantle structural racism and sexism in organizations, particularly through the use of data?
Wow. Kim told me I was going to get this data question, so I'll put my nerd hat on for a minute. I was commissioned by Denver Public Schools to conduct a qualitative study of some of the issues that had been bubbling up relative to African American educators and students. And this was about a year ago. And it was very interesting, you know, because DPS had the numbers of disproportionality and discipline and the few numbers of minority teachers and the difficulty in recruiting and retaining them, but they didn't go underneath the data and really find out what were some of the root causes of people leaving or feeling that they were working in a hostile work environment. So what I did was I sat down with 70 DPS African American educators on one-on-one interviews and focus groups. And there were tears and there were hugs, but the stories, the narratives underneath the data really told some stories about the lived experience of these employees in the Denver Public Schools. And there were things that arose in the data, like, you know, stereotypical labeling of passionate African American women as those angry black women. And I know I have this other woman inside of me, and sometimes she goes off, and Dr. Bailey has to say, all right, cool out. But they're all there. But they were being penalized and labeled and denied opportunities to move forward or being promoted because that label had been placed on them, sometimes and many times unjustly. They also had observations about students and schools in terms of discipline and the like. But after the study was completed, I have to give kudos to the leadership of the district for dispersing the study to all 10,000 plus employees so that we were all on the same page in terms of what the study revealed. And we did forums around the city at different schools to talk about the study. And then ultimately there was an African American Equity Task Force formed. And we've been working for the last 7 months to come up with recommendations in a number of areas, from human capital to student discipline to opportunity gaps and the like. And those recommendations will be presented to the Board of Education on June 15th. And I'll close because I'm watching this clock down here, and I knew I wouldn't be able to do this, but let me just close by saying that diversity is being invited to the dance. Inclusion is being asked to dance, but true inclusion is having a say about the music that's going to be played.
Well said.
And the decor that the room is going to take. So, you know, for your information, I love country, so I'll pass that on.
That was great. Thank you. Tamara, who's also from Aurora, is going to actually talk to us about how multi-sector partnerships with local government can foster inclusion and eliminate gender-based bias.
Absolutely. Well, thank you again for having me here. I'm with the Aurora Chamber of Commerce, and I oversee 2 committees, our Diversity and Inclusion Council and our Government Affairs Committee, so it kind of partners together here. We're very proud we're the only Chamber of Commerce to have a Diversity and Inclusion Council, and we started this because of the city that we live in. So piggybacking off of Angela, we are the most diverse city in Aurora, and we're the 9th most diverse city in the nation. So we're very proud of that. We have a little over 350 residents, and 68,000 of actually a little over 68,000 of those are foreign-born residents. So we found the need to form this council basically so we can be more inclusive to our business members. So our Chamber of Commerce is a membership organization. We have close to 1,000 business members, where a majority of them are small business owners. We are very, very lucky to partner with some great resources to help our business community. Our Diversity and Inclusion Council meets once a month. We do have structured committee meetings. They're educational-based trainings that help our business members learn the importance of diversity, inclusivity, and equity in the workplace. Some of the resources that we partner with are the SBA, Small Business Administration, and the SBDC, the Small Business Development Center. We have had presentations by both of them. They provide services, a lot of them are free services, and one of the great services they provide are teaching you how to become a woman-owned business and a minority-owned business. I don't know if many of you guys know, but woman-owned businesses are eligible for the most grants out there to help you and help support your business. Right behind that are minority-owned businesses, and a lot of these services that they offer are absolutely free to teach you how to go on from starting with the application to writing for your grant and getting the approval. So we also house the PTAC department, which is a Procurement Technical Assistance Center, and it's right in our chamber office. We hold monthly meetings to teach you how to do government grant writing, how to request grants, get funding for your businesses. With a lot of small minority and refugee and immigrant-owned businesses in Aurora, we really want to help them succeed and flourish. And that's what our Chamber of Commerce has done between our Diversity and Inclusion Council and partnering with a lot of the great resources. For example, another one is the Aurora Welcome Center, which provides free English-speaking classes to help our immigrant and refugee population. Things like late-night daycare services, they have resources for that for people who work multiple jobs and need childcare services late at night. So we are very excited for our committee. It's been almost 2 years. We just held our first summit and it went really, really well. So if anybody has any questions about starting their own council or committee to be effective in their community, I'd be more than happy to help.
Thank you very much. Much appreciated. Clearly, if we're going to be effective in making our organizations more and more inclusive, we need some way to measure them. So Mario, how can we best measure progress when we're trying to create cultures of inclusion?
Great question, Carolyn. Thank you. Just on behalf of Denver Health, I'm honored to be here. Let me first start by saying I'm outnumbered here on the panel, in the room, and at home as well with 2 daughters. I think, it's a very challenging question. I think we try to measure inclusion and diversity, certainly through annual employee engagement surveys. Some of the questions don't quite get specific enough, quite honestly. And so some of that entails really, particularly as a leader as myself, going around rounding with employees, being visible in the organization, and asking questions that at times may make others feel a bit comfortable and awkward, but understanding that I'm asking the question for a good reason, and you're in a safe space because I want that feedback. I think the other thing we certainly try to do, and again, it's not perfect. But, again, there's the patient side of it. And again, being in healthcare, we're very much about patients and making sure we're meeting the needs of our patients. And as you know, Denver Health is has a very diverse population, patients that we serve. Whether you have an income or not, we turn no one away from the care that we provide. But we certainly engage in community assessments with Denver Public Health and the state and other agencies to make sure that we are capturing information, valuable feedback as it relates to, are we providing the right care in the right place, if you will, and if we're not, certainly that gives us an opportunity to look inside of those communities, particularly in Southwest community where we opened our last primary care clinic, the Pena Clinic on Federal, where we intentionally also look to employ a fair amount of the employees that work in that clinic are from that community in that neighborhood. So I don't know if we've done the best job. Certainly look to others who have found some quantifiable tools in terms of measuring culture and inclusion. But we've tried to address it from both a qualitative and quantitative standpoint.
Just one follow-up question, Mario.
Yes.
A lot of people here may be in organizations that haven't even begun to think about trying to measure the inclusiveness of the organization. What would be your recommendation as their first step? How would they get started into this world of measuring the progress?
Yeah, I think, I would say having, and we also have a diversity and inclusion council at Denver Health that's been in place. It'll be 5 years in August. And I think, for us, it really is about, there are a wealth of tools out there from various organizations. I think about the Human Rights Campaign. I think about there's American Hospital Association. There are a number of organizations out there that have tools I think we can certainly benefit from. So I think you start somewhere, and again, having sort of the gall to start the conversation, but making sure that there are expectations and transparency around what you're trying to get to in the endpoint goes a long way.
Thank you very much. And now we're going to hear from Valencia. And the question is kind of one step up from just the basic inclusion, is how can organizations foster a cultures of collaboration, particularly that include the women in the collaboration?
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you for having me. One of the things at CH2M, we are a global organization. We're a global engineering and construction company with approximately 19,000 folks around the world. And collaboration is a key component of our culture. What we say in our diversity and inclusion vision statement is that at CH2M, we know that if we are more inclusive, we are more connected. And so we focus on that connectivity, that inclusion, also diversity as well as equality, to ensure that we provide the best innovative solutions for our clients. When we speak about inclusion at CH2M, we're speaking about everyone. We're speaking about not only the males in the organization, the females in the organization, and whenever I speak about this work, I have to make sure that everyone understands that they are all a part of this process, that they are all partners in this work. And the other thing at CH2M is what we've been working on is ensuring that our leadership, all of our executives in the organization are glib, they are aware, that they can speak about the importance of equality, diversity, as well as inclusion, so that it is not me out of my office as the diversity director for the company speaking about this work. And so the fact that we are collaborative and inclusive allows us to attract, develop, engage, and retain the very best talent that we can. This work around inclusion intersects with what we do with talent management and development, as well as talent acquisition and deployment. This work around collaboration and inclusion is a differentiator for us in the engineering and construction industry. It allows us to win work. It allows us, as I said, to provide innovative solutions for our clients. At CH2M, we have 8 employee network groups, and our Global Women's Network is our largest employee network group and has been in existence for 13 and a half years. And it's just an opportunity for our folks to engage in the work of their individual groups, but also support the work around diversity, equality, and inclusion. One of the challenges that we face at CH with regard to inclusion and collaboration is because we're global. And so how can we ensure that the women in the Middle East and in Latin America feel connected, they feel a sense of belonging to what we're doing in the firm? And so it takes lots of communication, lots of connection, lots of contact, And we do have opportunities to come together from time to time to have these conversations, to talk about the importance of equality, diversity, and inclusion becoming more of a part of the DNA of the culture of our organization.
Thank you very much.